It was January 1945, and the world was engulfed in conflict. As the situation deteriorated on the Eastern Front, countless civilians found themselves in peril. Families, soldiers, and the wounded poured into port cities like Gutenhafen, now known as Gdynia, desperate for an escape. They carried only what they could, their eyes reflecting fear and hope in equal measure. This was the beginning of one of the largest sea evacuations in history, a mission that would come to be known as Operation Hannibal. The Baltic Sea was their gateway to safety. Ships of all sizes were called into service, from large military vessels to small fishing boats. Among them was a passenger liner named the Wilhelm Gustloff. Once a symbol of leisure, the ship was now tasked with a far graver mission: to carry thousands of evacuees to safety. Though its original capacity was just over 1,800, it would take on more than 10,000 passengers, cramming people into every available space. Mothers clutched their children, elderly men and women huddled together, and soldiers sat silently, their faces hardened by war. The ship was a microcosm of human resilience and desperation. As the Wilhelm Gustloff prepared to depart, snow fell heavily, blanketing the docks in white. The cold was biting, but the passengers endured it, driven by the hope of reaching safety. Among them was a young nurse named Marta. She had spent months tending to the wounded and had finally been ordered to evacuate. Her hands were raw from the cold, and her uniform was stained from endless days of work, but her spirit remained unbroken. Marta found herself caring for a group of orphaned children, their small faces pale and frightened. She told them stories, her voice steady despite the uncertainty. The ship set sail on January 30th, 1945. The Baltic Sea stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving. The journey was perilous. Submarines patrolled the waters, and air attacks were a constant threat. The Wilhelm Gustloff was equipped with minimal defenses, a reminder of how dire the situation had become. On board, the passengers did what they could to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Songs were sung, stories were shared, and children played games in the cramped quarters. Marta continued to care for the orphans, making sure they had enough to eat and drink, even as supplies ran low. That evening, the ship's crew received a warning about potential submarine activity in the area. They adjusted their course, hoping to avoid danger. But the Baltic was vast, and the enemy was skilled. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted. Ice formed on the ship's railings, and the cold seeped into every corner. Yet there was a fragile sense of hope. The lights of the ship shone brightly against the night, a beacon in the dark sea. Unbeknownst to them, their illuminated silhouette made them a target. A submarine, lurking silently beneath the waves, spotted the ship. It fired 3 torpedoes, each striking with devastating precision. The Wilhelm Gustloff shuddered violently, the sound of the explosions reverberating through its metal frame. Panic erupted as passengers scrambled to find life vests and lifeboats. Marta, though terrified, focused on helping the children. She guided them toward an exit, her voice firm as she urged them to stay calm. The icy water rushed in, flooding the lower decks. People were forced to climb higher, their breaths visible in the freezing air. Some clung to railings while others braved the water in a desperate bid for survival. Marta held tightly to the smallest orphan, a boy no older than 3, as she climbed toward the deck. Around her, chaos reigned. The cries of the passengers mixed with the sound of rushing water, creating a cacophony of despair. On the deck, lifeboats were being lowered, but there were far too few for the number of people on board. Marta managed to secure a spot for the children, but she refused to leave. She handed the boy to an older woman, her eyes filled with tears. "Take care of him," she said, her voice steady despite the cold. Then she turned back to help others. The Wilhelm Gustloff sank within an hour. Of the estimated 10,000 passengers on board, only about 1,200 survived. The freezing waters claimed thousands of lives, their dreams and hopes lost to the depths. Marta was among those who did not survive. Her story, like so many others, became part of the legacy of Operation Hannibal. Despite this tragedy, the evacuation effort continued. Over 2 million people were ultimately rescued, transported across the Baltic to safety. Operation Hannibal remains one of the largest naval evacuations in history, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable hardship. Though the Wilhelm Gustloff and its passengers were lost, their story lives on as a reminder of the countless sacrifices made during those tumultuous times.